Hey guys, welcome back to Oak Abode. Today I'm going to go over everything that I know and that I find important about how to train backyard chickens. There are going to be three main aspects that I'm going to cover in this video. So the first one is training your chickens to come when they're called, which is really important, especially if you like to free range your chickens like we do from time to time. Thank you, Rambo. Number two is training your chickens to come in by themselves at night. And I know that probably experienced chicken keepers are hearing that and they're like, what? That's so obvious. But believe me, we get so many questions on it, and there are a few little tidbits of helpful info for newbies out there. So that'll be number two. And then number three, I'm gonna go over training new chicks and chickens in general to be friendly or easy to handle. Isn't totally necessary if you are not into being your chicken's best buddies, but we do get a lot of questions about that, so I figured I would go over how we like to do that as well. So first things first, training chickens to come when they're called is really important, especially if you free range chickens like we do. We used to free range ours all the time, so they would pretty much come whenever we walked over because they're pretty social. But since we've been having more predator issues these days, we are more reserved with their free ranging, which means they are less likely or they are less willing to come when we call them because they want to stay out in free range. Can't blame them, but we got to keep them safe. So I believe the most important thing is to have a reliable sound or call that you use only when you have their absolute favorite treat. For our chickens, this treat is Grub Terra. So Grub Terra originally sent us bags to try out, and we've been in love with them ever since. And the reason it's so important is two reasons. Number one, it's really good for them. So we don't like to feed them mealworms. We don't like to deal with giving them oyster shells, and black soldier fly larvae have way more calcium than mealworms. And so we have found just feeding them kind of the calcium fortified chicken food plus black soldier fly larvae that they've had nice hard shells. We don't even bother with oyster shells. We haven't now for years. So I'm gonna show you guys, we have this crew over here that's free ranging back in the gully, the gulch we call it. And they might come because they know this bag's here now, but I tried calling them earlier before I had the bag and they didn't come. And that's actually very unlike these chickens because they used to come whenever they were called. The problem is they're so into free ranging right now that they probably won't come. Here, girls. Here, girls. Here, girls. Oh, now Willow pecked the bag. So what we do instead of calling them here girls, is we have the bag, the sound of the bag. So as soon as the sound of the bag comes, they come running. So, ow! So basically, instead of having recall be a word, my word is no longer as reliable to them because I use that word to call them when I might just be giving them regular chicken food or when I might be giving them kitchen scraps, and it may be really exciting to them, it may not be that exciting to them. So the best recall that we have is with the sound of this bag. Again, we use Grub Terra. You can use mealworms if you want. There's just so many more benefits to black soldier fly larvae. We've actually had so many people leave comments and say thank you for tipping us off to Grub Terra because they love it. And it really is very important to teach them reliable recall if they're free ranging. They're not gonna leave this bag alone now. Because if you see a predator that they don't see, or if you just need to get them, sometimes we're going away for dinner or something and we need to put them away before the sun goes down and before they come back. It is important that they have reliable recall and they just come right away. So the biggest way that we do that is with this Grub Terra bag, and then I'll sometimes call here girls to get their attention. They're just pecking the bag now. So of course, I linked the Grub Terra for you guys below, and we also do have a discount code, OakAbode, for 10% off. They're probably gonna keep pecking this bag. Stop it, guys. I'm gonna put it in my lap, so hopefully you can't have it. It's mine. It's mine. Okay, the second thing that I get so many questions on is how to teach your chickens to go in their coop by themselves at night. So what a lot of people who have never had chickens before don't understand is that chickens instinctually will seek cover when dusk starts to fall to protect themselves from predators and just to return to their home base. So what's most important is helping them realize what their home base is. Oftentimes people will take chicks from like a chick brooder and then they will put them out in a chicken run or just in the yard, and then they'll think they'll go into a new coop at night by themselves, which is not necessarily true. They don't know that that new coop is their new home base. And that's when chickens can develop bad habits like roosting in trees, roosting on fences, not going into their coop at night, etc. What's kind of considered best practice is to put them in the new coop for a few days before you let them outside so that they can kind of make the inside of that coop their new home. Now, it is a lot easier for new chicks to learn how to go inside and when to go inside, where to go at night if you're integrating them into an older flock who already knows the routine. And I did do a whole video on how to integrate baby chicks with older chickens safely. So I'll link that video for you guys below if you haven't seen that already. But it is something that you want to get right at the beginning. Because if chicks or chickens pick the wrong place to call home base, it's a lot harder to break them out of that habit once they've started it than it is to just get them started going into the coop at the right place from the get-go. So sometimes people will get chickens that roost in trees, or they will roost on fences, or another problem is nest box roosting. It's just a lot easier to prevent these things from happening than it is to correct them when they happen. As far as nest box sleeping goes, that is something that we have dealt with. Personally, it's not actually something that bothers me that much, but if you do want to train your chickens not to sleep in the nest box, I've heard that the best way to do that is to block off the nest box either indefinitely or at least for a few days until they break that habit. Actually, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but another question we get a lot is how to train chickens to lay eggs in the nest box. This is another one of those things where chickens will instinctually want to lay eggs somewhere kind of enclosed and dark and safe. So generally the nest boxes are kind of appealing to them. Not always. So oftentimes chickens will, instead of laying in the nest box, if you have a coop with corners, they do tend to like to lay in the corners instead as well. And just speaking from experience, it tends to be like the furthest corner that's hardest to reach in the coop. And once they start doing that, other chickens are likely to follow suit and start laying their eggs in that spot too. The reason for this is because chickens like to lay their eggs where other eggs already are. And I believe the theory is that when they see an egg safe by itself, their mind tells them this is a safe place to lay an egg. No predator has taken it. So especially if you leave those eggs that are like laid in the corner uncollected for a while, there's a really good chance other chickens are gonna start laying there too, and you don't want that. It just becomes a pain to collect eggs, especially when they're hiding them. So one thing you can do is you can buy fake eggs. I'll link the ones that we used for you guys below. They're fake eggs that you just leave out in the nest boxes at all times. So the idea is that you collect the eggs really quickly wherever they're laying them. That's not the right place, so it's not in the nesting box. You want to collect those as soon as possible. And then you leave the fake eggs in the nest box so that every chicken who's looking for a spot to lay an egg, they see that the nest box is the safe place for the egg, that the other eggs get taken by predators really quickly, and that they prefer laying in the nest box. So this is something that we've done. It did work. Probably 80% of the time it worked. If we had a really stubborn chicken that was still laying eggs in the wrong spot, we also had to use the fake eggs, and we would block off that spot for like a week or two at least. And that eventually fixed the problem permanently. Okay, the last thing that I'll talk about that we get questions on all the time is how to train baby chicks to be friendly. Baby chicks tend to be really wild, and as they get older, they tend to get more wild. Now, there are two things you should know about how to train baby chicks to be friendly. Number one is that they are incredibly food motivated, and they're incredibly habit motivated. But because chicken nutrition is pretty nuanced, and they often say that you don't want to introduce treats like Grubterra, I think they say around 7 weeks, double check with them on that. But before that, when they're only a few days old, they don't necessarily, if you don't provide the right grit, they won't have the capacity to break down other foods as well. And it's just a safer idea to just keep them on the chick food. Not to say that they can't eat other stuff. It's just we've dealt with crop problems in chicks enough times that we just keep them on the chick food now. So what I have found is a really awesome treat that the chicks go absolutely crazy for is just their regular chick food soaked in water. So the way that I do this is basically the same techniques they use to ferment chicken feed. If you've looked into fermenting chicken feed, we used to do it. We didn't find it made that much of a difference in the feed bill, and it didn't make a difference in their health that we experienced, so we stopped doing it. But we did find that they loved the soak feed a lot better than the dry food. So I would just do this by every couple days. I would take some chick feed and I would fill it with water. It's really important to make sure that the water is higher than the level of chick feed, because if their water is below the level of chick feed, you can get mold growth, and obviously that is not a good thing. And you don't want to let it soak for too long. So I found that I would let it soak for a couple days, and then I would just rotate it every couple days or so. But basically, the chicks would go crazy for it. Now, it's important to know that they don't know it's really yummy the first time you put it in there. And that goes with pretty much any chicken treat. So oftentimes people will try and take the soaked feed and just put it in the container and think, why aren't they coming to my hand? It's just because they don't know that it's good. So the first thing that I do is I make the chick feed. The second thing that I do is I put a little bit on the side of the brooder, or a little bit on their feeder, or anything that's hard and then can make a tapping sound. and then I'll tap it with my fingernail. And that tapping sound with the fingernail, they perceive as a chicken pecking, so they want to peck, they want to try it too. And once they get a taste of it a few times, then is when I start training them with my hand. So as soon as I'm putting it on the side of the brooder or on a hard little dish or something, they come running. That's when I'll start incorporating my hand with the soaked chick feed, and they start to learn that my hand is a good thing, and then it pretty much snowballs from there. Once they associate your hand as a good thing, it becomes a lot easier to train them from there. Another thing I'll say about raising friendly chicks is that I know the tendency is to want to grab them because chicks are so grabbable, but chicks and birds in general hate to be grabbed. It's like the most predatory thing you can do to them. So if you can, resist the urge to grab them and instead just work on using the treats and using your hand over time just to get them used to it slowly and with positive reinforcement. All you have to do is be patient, and those chicks will crawl on your hand eventually, whether it's to eat the food or whether they're just curious. It's pretty funny how they really do like to just crawl on hands for the sake of crawling on hands if they feel comfortable with it. This is the technique that we use with our Easter eggers. Frankly, I did not have the patience to do this with the other chickens. After the Easter eggers, they became less of pets and they became more of just how we get our eggs. And I think that's totally fine. You don't have to have chickens as pets. You should definitely treat them humanely and respectfully no matter what your system is. The other thing that I'll say is that chickens naturally, once they hit the age where they start laying eggs, they naturally become more friendly, less flighty. So they won't always be the same as if you train them from little chicks. Cookie here is one of the few chicks from years ago that I raised to be friendly from a young age, and those chicks are still so much more friendly than any of the other chickens we have. That being said, know that the chicks will seem crazy as teenagers and as baby chicks, but especially as teenagers. Once they start laying, they will calm down a little bit, just hormonally. That's how it is. Roosters, on the other hand, might be a little bit of the opposite. We have really good luck with Rambo, our rooster. He's a gentleman for the most part. He's always a gentleman to us, and that's what matters. So those are pretty much my most important tips for training backyard chickens. This is our biggest tip, honestly. It doesn't have to be grub terra. Like, it can be mealworms if you're not that interested in the higher nutrition, or the other thing I'll say is it can be like just kitchen scrap. The thing about kitchen scraps is you have to be careful because chickens will get picky, especially if they have free access to food all the time. So they'll get picky, and if you have a call, like I do, like I just say, here girls, if you have a call and you use that call with not that great of treats sometimes they're really good treats, sometimes they're not, that's what's gonna create an unreliable recall. So either have a sound or a certain call that you only use when you feed them something really good, which is, for us, it's just the grub terra bag, these treats, and they come running every single time. So makes our life a lot easier. How about it, girls? And gentlemen. So again, I will link them for you guys below, and don't forget to use our discount code OAKABODE for 10% off. And it's probably saved us more than one chicken just because we're able to call them in so easily instead of them getting eaten by predators. So well worth it to us. Please leave a comment below with your experience and any tips and tricks that you can offer. Let me know what the most important things that you've trained your chickens to do are, or let me know what you wish you could train them to do, and I'll see if I can figure something out. Not the smartest animal, incredibly food motivated animal, so that's the good news. Thanks again for watching. I will link our podcast, and our Instagram is oak_abode if you're not already following us there. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, don't forget to hit subscribe so you can join us again in the future. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time.